So I'm well aware that it has been more than a hot minute since I have last uploaded anything like this onto the channel. And I'll be honest with you guys, the main reason for that is simply because YouTube is not something that I would want to do full time as a job or a career. Like creating videos, recording them, editing them, uploading them. It is something that I enjoy doing, but not to the point where I would consider doing it regularly or for like a full time thing. But all of that being said, all of that shit out of the way, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail of today's video, in today's video, we're going to be talking about The Substance. So, what is The Substance? Well, The Substance is a movie that follows the life of 50-year-old Elizabeth Sparkle. And before I get any further into this, I would just like to issue a big spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen the movie but is currently watching this video. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm just going to let you know right here and now, I'm going to be spoiling this movie for you in this video. So I recommend two things: either just click off this video and go watch another one that doesn't spoil it for you, or if you want to watch this video, support me and my channel and my content, click off this video, go watch the movie, and then come back to this. And if you do that, big power and respect to you, love, big ups you. Now I can just get straight into it. So, follows the life of 50-year-old Elizabeth Sparkle, who is, I say, a former Hollywood celebrity, not in the sense of like, she's lost her money and her job and all this shit and she's, her life has gone to hell. She's still fairly successful. A lot of people in her generation, around her age, know who she is and can recognize her, as we see throughout the video. And she still clearly has a lot of success, fame and money to be living in the, I believe it's the penthouse apartment that, that she lives in. So it's not like this woman's life has gone to complete shit, like she's still rich, she's still a celebrity, she still has fame and status. She's just not as big as she once was. Her agent, manager, I don't really know who or what this guy is, but the one with the weird shitty suit and eats the shrimps and the really, like, in the most, I hate watching people eat, like, overall, like, in general, but, like, the cinematography, like the camera work of like this shot of the scene where he sat down talking to Elizabeth and like eating those prawns with like the sauce, the cream, whatever, honestly, like made me want to throw up. Like, that shit was disgusting. So in terms of cinematography, that's some amazing work right there. But anyway, this guy, her manager, her agent, whatever, sits her down and basically says, Liz, look, you're 50 now, and we gotta give people what they want, and what the people want is someone who's young and fit and excitable. Basically, go fuck yourself, we want someone younger and prettier than you. Like, obviously that's not how the conversation goes, but that is the gist of what he was saying. So because of this, Elizabeth's mental health, takes a turn, falls into a spiral, and we see her become more insecure and more self-conscious, particularly about her appearance, her age, and how she looks. And that is when she signs up for something called The Substance, which is an injection that is meant to quite literally split you in two, a younger, more beautiful version of yourself, and then, the current real you. And she basically has to swap between bodies every 7 days. She has to, 7 days as this young, beautiful version of herself called Sue, and then, 7 days as a normal, typical Elizabeth self, and then, back and forth every 7 days, keep switching with no exceptions. If you've seen the movie, you already know that is not how this shit goes. And we start to see a dichotomy form between Sue and Elizabeth. Sue being the new, younger version of her, this new body, this new version of herself, and Elizabeth being the current 50-year-old present version, the real version of herself. And we see a dichotomy start to form. Elizabeth takes a massive dislike and hatred towards Sue, despite being the one that created her, and despite quite literally being Sue. And we see Sue take a massive dislike and a sabotage towards Elizabeth, despite Elizabeth being her only source of stabilizer, which is what keeps her young and beautiful, what keeps her body functioning, because obviously she is a clone, she is not a natural organic human, I suppose you could put it. And on the topic of like the science of this movie, if you're interested in the science and the process behind all of that, go check out Rowan OK Gaming. I'll leave a little link to his channel in the description. But other than that, we see the dichotomy form, we see them hate each other, and then we see them basically just destroy each other's lives, despite them being the exact same person. So, what do I like about this movie? Well, the first thing I like about this movie is the way that it highlights and presents the issues that women face, not just in Hollywood, but in society overall. Getting older, aging, becoming older is a process that sucks for literally everyone, like regardless of sex, gender, religion, ethnicity, whatever. Like, no one wants to get old, right? No one wants to be old and grey and wrinkly and saggy and at the point where you can't even wipe your own ass anymore. Like, no one wants to be like that. However, I personally think that growing older, getting older, losing control over your body and your youth and your physical features is a worse process for women than it is for men. And my main reasoning for that is, like, if you're an older guy, if you're a 70-year-old guy and you're old and you're wrinkly and you're grey and you're saggy, like as long as you've got money and like a successful career, you can still get people to date you and go out with you, even if they're like in their 20s and their 30s and you're 70 because you've got money. And granted, they're only with you for the money. They're not with you because they actually like you. You're not going to care about that because you're getting something at the end of the day. Whereas if you're a woman, you can be rich and successful and have a good career, but if you're old and therefore deemed unattractive, then people likely aren't going to be interested in you or listen to what you have to say. Because unfortunately, we do still live in a society where women more or less are only valued by a lot of people and organizations and companies and industries because of their physical appearance. Like, a lot of people don't care if a woman is smart or educated or if she makes money. A lot of people just want to be with a woman who is good looking, and that is it. And you can have your own thoughts onto whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, whether or not that's acceptable or not. That's not something I'm here to talk about. I am not here to engage in or start a political debate. But that is my opinion, right? It is my opinion that getting older and aging is a worse process for women, not just socially, but also biologically, because you've got to deal with menopause and shit like that. Whereas men, you don't really have to deal with anything like that. So socially and biologically, I think aging is a more difficult process for women than it is for men, and that is highlighted, quite a lot in this movie. And another thing I like about this movie, aside from the way it sort of sticks up for and supports, represents women's issues in this movie, is the body horror and the gore in this stuff. Like, I know a lot of people have complained that the body horror and the gore, and the nudity as well, was like way too much. And I'll be honest with you, I personally think the nudity like was excessive. But like being physically attractive and being beautiful is like a very key aspect of this movie. So I suppose that the nudity to an extent is necessary because it reflects how these people feel about their bodies and the way that people perceive them. And I think the extreme body horror and gore in this movie is a good way of getting that out there, because with content and shit like that, like, you can't escape it. It's right there. It's in your face. There's loads of blood. There's loads of gore. And like the hidden meaning behind it, the representation, you can't escape it because it's right there in your face. So I like the hidden messaging behind it. I like, the whole highlighting of women's issues, like the body horror. I like the gore. And I also really, really, really like the dichotomy that forms between Elizabeth and Sue. Sue is only formed and created because Elizabeth wants to be young and fit and beautiful again, despite her, at least in my opinion, already being a very attractive woman even for her age. The dichotomy that forms between these characters is really good because they're the same people, they're the same genetic coding, the same genetic material, but we see a dichotomy form between them. We see them start to hate each other and sabotage each other despite being the same person. And I think that ties a lot into self-hatred and self-consciousness, which is something that Elizabeth clearly deals with quite severely in this movie. And I also like the science behind it, like the injection and shit. I like the effects. I like all like the little gory shit. But that's pretty much it. Like, those are the main things I like about this movie. And is there anything I dislike about this movie? Well, I suppose I dislike the nudity to an extent because as much as I understand why it was there and why it was deemed sort of necessary, I do think it's a bit annoying because I think this is a really good movie with a lot of really good hidden messaging. But like, if you're trying to watch this movie with a person and like a lot of this movie is just tits and ass, bro. Like, I'm not even gonna lie to you. And like, if you're trying to, like, if you're watching that on your dog, like if you're watching that on your ones, on yourself, by your own, like, that's fine, because why are you gonna care? No one's there to watch it with you. But if you're trying to watch that with like friends or family, like, you can't do that shit without it being really awkward. That's probably the only complaint I have about this movie, is like the extent and the severity of the nudity in this movie. But that's pretty much it. I like the gore, I like the bloodiness, I like the disturbingness. Everything else I'm sort of fine with. Even though, the fucking disgusting ass camera shots like Mr. Shrimp, that's what I'm going to call him because I don't know what his real name is. I don't really have many complaints about this movie at all. I think it did an amazing job of representing Elizabeth and Sue and the issues that people in society face overall, particularly women. And overall, would I recommend this movie? If you're into horror, psychological shit, gore, thrillers, all of that, like if you're into deeply disturbing stuff, I recommend this movie 100%. If you're into like women's issues, societal issues, or all that type of stuff, like patriarchy and that, and the way that, women are sort of discriminated against and, made fun of and belittled in society and in Hollywood, I would also recommend this movie because it does a great job of portraying that. If you're not into gore, you're not into horror, and you're quite squeamish, obviously I do not recommend this movie for obvious reasons, but other than that, I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is a fan of horror, body horror, gore, all that type of stuff. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, I would probably give this movie, it's a bit of a difficult one, like, assuming 0 is like shit, and 10 is like, this could not get any better, and 5 is like, bang on, yeah, it was alright, it was average. I'd probably give it like an 8.5, maybe a 9. You all can disagree, that's fine, but overall, I'd probably give this like Probably like, yeah, an 8 to a 9 out of 10. So we'll meet in the middle, go for like 8.5. That seems okay with me. That seems fair to me. So overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I would recommend it to anyone who is a fan of horror or like women's issues and bodily issues, mental health, and all that stuff. And yeah, overall, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you did. And I will see you all in the next one, whatever that's going to be.